Hello and welcome to this mayoral debate hosted by the Sumter Item. I'm Kayla Green, Executive Editor of the Item, and I'll be your moderator for the evening. Just some quick background and housekeeping, and then we'll get started. At the beginning of this year, Sumter's mayor, Joe McElveen, announced he would not be seeking re-election this November, culminating 20 years of service in that role and more as a public servant and veteran. So now voters who live in the city of Sumter have the opportunity to choose their next leader. The 6 candidates span gender, racial, and generational lines. Sitting alphabetically is Sabrina Belcher, Debbie Bowen, Foxy Ray Campbell, Calvin Hasty, David Merchant, and Archie Parnell. I want to thank them all for coming this evening to talk about their platform and why they think they deserve your vote. I also want to thank all of you candidates individually for running. Policies cannot be made, changed, or improved without people participating. And our view at the Item is that local, whether it's education, business, political office, or news, impacts citizens on a daily basis. So I'm glad that we have 6 candidates putting themselves out there to be a part of our democracy. I also want to thank the Sumter Opera House and the City of Sumter for offering us the space to host this event. This debate is not open to the public because of COVID-19, but I think we can all appreciate the importance of holding this debate live and in person for those who are here, and this space has allowed us to do that. Our staff is both here running this event and working to still put out tomorrow's paper, and I want to thank all of them for their endless pursuit to keep our community informed on what they need and want to know. Now for the debate rules. We will start with opening statements given by candidates in alphabetical order. Each candidate will have 1 minute for his or her opening statement. After that, we will go into questions asked by the moderator. Each candidate will answer every question and will be allotted 90 seconds to do so. They have not seen the questions beforehand, but they are printed at the tables now for them to look at. Questions will only be asked out loud once. Questions will be answered in a different order each time in an order I have computer randomized. Y'all do not know the orders. After each candidate has answered the question, candidates may take 30 seconds each to respond. Candidates each have a response card, which is their second name card, that they'll hold up if they want to respond, and I'll call on them. Responding at the end of each round is optional. Time will be kept tonight by Zach Lowe, he's down there. Zach is a curriculum coach at R.E. Davis College Preparatory Academy. Before assuming that role this school year, he taught middle school social studies, for which he was named Sumter's District Teacher of the Year and a top 5 finalist for State Teacher of the Year. Thank you, Zach, for helping us tonight. Candidates, when Zach holds up his yellow card, you have 15 seconds remaining. When he holds up his red card, your time has expired. At that point, you may finish your sentence, but please do not continue after that. I will promptly remind you your time has expired and we'll move on to the next candidate. This debate will go until 7:30 tonight. When there are 10 minutes remaining, I will announce that the next question is the final question. I may ask you for clarification if the question is not answered or we need it answered a little bit further. There will be no attacking other candidates or city personnel. For the audience, this is streaming live right now, and it will be available on our Facebook page and website shortly after we conclude. That will be the Facebook Live video posted, and our Sumter Today team is also producing a higher quality version that will be posted soon. For complete coverage of our local and other elections impacting our community, please continue reading the Sumter Item or go online to theitem.com/election2020 for reliable, accurate information. We will have a special Pullout Vote 2020 section inserted into the paper and available at our office in the weekend edition on October 17th. Now let's get started with opening statements. Ms. Belcher, you may begin. As a reminder, you have 60 seconds for your opening statement, and Zach will raise a yellow card when you have 15 seconds left.
Okay. Thank you. Well, good evening, Sumter. When it comes to this race for mayor, there's a lot to be said in the media, and I know that the narrative is negative. But as far as the candidate goes, I have stood with this community in many areas. I have advocated for rights for those who have needed them in many areas before this. Before I even decided to run, I was advocating for this community and what needed to be done as far as civil rights goes. I've always stood with the community, and whatever the event was or the issue, I have always been there. And I am the candidate that will not forget the people that need the help the most.
Thank you. Opening statement?
It's a pleasure to be here today. We have 30+ days left before Election Day. This election is going to be a game changer for the United States and for Sumter. We have many candidates here with great ideas for the future, but only one of us will be selected. I represent Sumter. I'm a believer in taking care of home. I'm not one for grand words, I'm a doer. My work speaks for itself. My career and my life revolves around people, community, and family. I have always worked with teams, and as a member and as a leader, it takes a team to make change and to move forward. Sumter citizens and the City Council will be my team. As a voice for the people of Sumter, we can fix the issues that we face now and in the future. I will be the voice for the served and the underserved, the privileged and the underprivileged. It takes a team to make change. Taking care of home is a priority, and home is Sumter. In our home, we have poverty, crime, neglect, and division. We also have great people, a beautiful community, and a whole lot of potential.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Hasty?
Good evening. I have served my country in the United States Army for over 20 years, and now I am seeking the opportunity to serve my city as mayor. I have always said, if granted the pleasure of being elected as mayor by the citizens of Sumter, I will not be taking over a broken city. I would be leading a progressive city. Mayor Joe McAveen has set a good example for this city over the past 20 years. It is my plan to lead the continued progress for all the citizens of Sumter. I ask for your support by electing me, Calvin K. Hasty, Sr., Mayor of the City of Sumter. As your mayor, I will focus on 5 key areas: public health and safety, affordable housing, economic development, small business, youth empowerment and initiatives, and the military.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Mr. Merchant?
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Green, for having us. Thank you, the item, for hosting this for us tonight, and Sumter Opera House for making it available. It starts with a question. David, why are you running for mayor? And that answer hasn't changed from the 8 years ago when I ran for council. When we decided, Laurie and I, my wife, decided to move back and open up business and start a family 20 years ago, we wanted to do our part. And so that kind of mission has never changed. 8 years ago was with council, and now as Mayor McAveen retired, we feel the next step that we can help lift up all of Sumter, as opposed to focusing on one area, our area, that we can lift up all of Sumter and unite the city and take it to new levels of accomplishment.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Mr. Parnell?
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the item for hosting this. This is a marvelous thing to have. And I'd also like to thank the people that are tuning in and watching this now. It's very important what we're doing. I just want to give you a little bit about my background. I was born in Sumter. I was born in South Carolina, but I was educated in Sumter public schools. Who I am at my core was formed here in Sumter. I had a successful career, first at the U.S. Department of Justice and working for U.S. corporations around the world. I came back to Sumter with my wife because we believed we could make a difference. When COVID-19 hit, my wife and I started Sumter Cares and we provided 2,000 face masks for city and county employees and for churches. I've been blessed in my business and law career, and Sumter has given me so much. That's why I want to give back. But talk is cheap.
Time is up. Thank you. All right, Ms. Bowen, are you ready for your opening statement?
I am.
Okay.
Is this working?
It is.
Okay. I'm Debbie Bowen. I guess I'm not talking to anybody out there.
Yeah.
I'm Debbie Bowen. I have been here for 46 years. I came here as a result of Shaw, like so many people did. I've had 2 very successful businesses, and I've served on countless boards. I had Miss Libby's School of Dance, and the community supported us hugely. So I wanted to give back to the community, so I did so in many ways, serving on boards. I started the Sumter Art Showcase, which was a fundraiser for the Women and Children's Pavilion. And I think to date, we have raised about $500,000. I want to be the mayor of Sumter because I know I can make a difference.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. This first question will first be for Mr. Parnell. If you received a $1 million grant to use for Sumter in any way that you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Well, I mean, I think that it would have to be, the whole thing about a grant is that you have to factor that into your budget. It's all about making priorities. And for me, I think that here in Sumter, we need to focus on our schools. I mean, the schools are the underpinning of everything else. Our connection with Shaw would be even better with better schools. And so I would try to plow that money back into the education system.
Thank you. And the next answer is for Ms. Campbell.
With a $1 million grant, I would build a homeless shelter. With that homeless shelter, I would then create opportunities for them. I will have psychiatrists so that we can address their mental health issues. I would also have education for them to bring them back to society, give them a trade or something, so that once they are rehabilitated in the facility, that they can successfully go back into society with knowing how to keep a job, bringing their mental status, their mental state basically back to society.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next up is Mr. Hasty.
Thank you very much. If I received $1 million grant, I would spend it on our youth. We have so many young people in our city that have nothing to do. They have no mentoring, no one to mentor them. I would try to establish some mentoring opportunities for them, some job opportunities for our youth. So many of our young people are walking the street with no social skills, they're breaking the law, and I think they just need an opportunity for someone to meet with them, talk with them. So I would certainly invest that money in the youth in the city of Sumter.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next up is Ms. Bowen.
Thank you. If I had $1 million to spend any way I wanted to, I'm going to have to piggyback on what Councilman Hasty said. I think the old cliche, our children are our future. I do believe that. We have so many children in the county especially that are in single-parent homes. They don't have a father figure at home. They may be being raised by grandparents who are already worn out physically and financially. These children have no one to be held accountable to. I would like to pair up airmen and soldiers from Shaw that don't have family here with our middle schoolers to check their report card, to play some after-school sports with, to teach them about manners and self-esteem. So I would pour as much money as I could into our middle schools. I love our senior high school kids, but their mindset is pretty formed. So I would target the middle schoolers.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next up to answer is Ms. Belcher.
If I was given a $1 million grant, I would first focus on building runaway shelters for those that have run away and need the services. That would also give them training skills that they may not get anywhere else, as far as resume writing, job interviews, job placement, job training. We would then move forward into focusing on how we can improve our education, especially in the middle of the pandemic that is COVID-19, and giving funding where it's needed to kind of make it much safer for the students to go back to school if that is the final decision. I would also focus on the areas in Sumter where we see are very much run down or abandoned, and all of the abandoned homes, in a way that we could put efforts forth to buy those properties and have them owned by the city if they are not already owned by the city, and rebuilding them and making them affordable houses for those that are of lower income capacity or for those that just simply need the extra help with getting homes.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. And last up for this question is Mr. Merchant.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be awesome to be able to have $1 million. Now, that would, where I would take the $1 million is I would, with a grant, attach it to a current grant that we're about to run out of money on, and that is, as I've spoken to folks, and it's a problem all across the city, is dilapidated homes and housing. And so we received a grant, and that we were able to take down some homes and clean up the properties, but we run through that money pretty quickly. So it would be a blessing to get another $1 million to be able to continue that, to be able to take down dilapidated homes, clear the lots, and prepare the way for potential opportunities for more affordable housing or other housing in those spots, to be able to uplift the neighborhoods where they were.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Right. And so moving on to the second question. How will you balance your professional and personal responsibilities with your duties to the city if elected? What barriers, if any, do you have to maintaining your elected duties as a priority? And first up for this question will be Ms. Bowen.
Could you repeat that question again?
I'm only reading the question once, but you do have it on your piece of paper.
Right, and I don't have my glasses.
It's about balancing your professional responsibilities if you were elected.
I read it earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
I have put in place, not only for when I become mayor, but for the race, I have hired a full-time assistant to help me with my business responsibilities. I have 30 agents that are helping take some of my real estate responsibilities off of me. They're awesome. I intend to spend every day until the election working on my campaign. I have some great ideas, and I'm going to put some more signs out. But once I become mayor, I will have already cleared my business schedule to do what I have to do.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next up is Mr. Merchant.
How would I balance the personal responsibilities? As I considered that prior to deciding to run, could I do that? And the answer was yes. Currently on council, we have certain meetings, our normal meetings, and then we have other meetings and other events at Shaw or wherever it may be around the community. Mayor will require more of that. As mayor is a cheerleader or team captain for the city, you're required, your timing is required. So over the last year or so, I've positioned myself with my business and just with my time to be able to allow that. My day starts at 4:40 every morning. And so, I've always heard that the busier you are, the more you get done. And so I truly believe that. I think, a lot of times when you don't have a lot to do, you don't get anything done. So we try to stay structured and organized, and it would carry that into the mayor's office.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next up is Ms. Campbell.
How will I balance my professional responsibilities? Well, we are expanding into the Columbia market with a broker in charge in that market. As a real estate owner, broker owner, that broker in charge will then take charge of both offices. So that will alleviate and free up a lot of time for me to take the position and role as the mayor of Sumter.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Hasty.
Great question. I think professional responsibility has most to do with accountability. I will implement accountability procedures in the city at all levels, even the police department, even elected officials, in all of our departments. I think accountability, everyone must be accountable for their actions, and I think transparency. We must let the people of this city know that we have absolutely nothing to hide. So I think accountability and transparency are most important.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next up is Mr. Parnell.
Well, I'm going to stand up if you don't mind. We have here in Sumter the city manager form of government, and the mayor, some people say, is merely a figurehead. But that's not true. I mean, the mayor is a convener of people to get things done. The mayor is someone who sells the city. I was talking with people yesterday afternoon, and they were asking for more involvement by the mayor. And so my circumstance, I teach a course at a law school. That's what I'm doing now. I do it remotely. I have research and other things that I do, so I am busy, and I continue to be very, very busy. Had a very, very busy schedule in my past. But I will be able to focus a good deal of my time on city affairs and bring focus to the city and sell the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next up is Ms. Belcher.
I will be able to balance my professional responsibilities. First, I will be resigning from my current job in private home health care. Secondly, I will be leaving my children and my elderly parents that I care for with a very good support system. And thirdly, I will have time on my hands to consistently focus on the needs of the city that are priorities and the needs of the people in the city.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, and I forgot to say for the first one that the first question and then this one as well were submitted by the Sumter County League of Women Voters. Next question is, if you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why? We are starting with Mr. Hasty.
Great. There are so many things I would change with our zoning code, but since you limit us to one, I would say the donut holes that we have in this city. We have areas in this city that are surrounded by city-owned property, but belong to the county. That makes no sense. We need to own those areas. We shouldn't have all these donut holes throughout the city that don't belong to the city, that are surrounded by the city, and but belong to the county. So that's one thing I would definitely take a look at among several other things.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next up is Ms. Belcher.
I think one of the main things I would change in our zoning codes is where we allow the different businesses to come in and be placed. Because a lot of times where the business is what brings in the traffic through the city, that brings more people that are going to live, that allows you to create more jobs there. You know, we have to focus on where exactly we're placing these things and where we can put them to kind of balance out the city, where it's not just one centralized area that's built up so much as like downtown Sumter, but then we've got the south side of Sumter that's suffering.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Next up is Ms. Campbell.
One of the zoning codes that I would change would possibly be the one for rezoning or the residential restrictions or the commercial. You would have a commercial property within a residential area, and it's hard to get it rezoned. It's a lot of red tape that you have to go through, a long process, and I would try to make that process easier for the property owners.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next up is Ms. Bowen.
I would have to say, as a real estate agent, and I do some commercial and a lot of residential, and I think probably Ms. Campbell would agree with me on this, the length of time to get something rezoned is ridiculous. I just lost a commercial sale because it was going to take about 3 months once you introduce it, and then they have meetings, and then it has to go before the city council. I think they should streamline that process so that it doesn't take as long. I do think our zoning folks that do that do a good job now. I don't think I would change anything other than streamlining the process and making it go faster.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next up is Mr. Merchant.
That's one thing that's come up on council and with the planning department here in the last year or so. I think our zoning ordinance is a little dated, so the whole entire document needs to be looked at. But if there's one thing I would focus on, and speaking with a group of folks yesterday, they were just saying, how can we make it easier through our zoning? Is there ways to make it easier for businesses? You know, whether new businesses coming in, make sure it's a streamlined process like we've heard, but also for businesses, for new housing development, just everything that incorporates that. Can we streamline our zoning to make it continue to make Sumter a business-friendly community?
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next up is Mr. Parnell.
Thank you, Kayla, for that question. You know, this question is really complicated. I mean, there's so many different interests that need to be considered. You know, this is not just one person, you know, being czar of zoning and changing the rules. And so this would obviously take quite a lot of discussion and so forth. You know, zoning is just balancing conflicting points of view about limited use of land. And so, you know, I think that once a zoning decision is made, the tax implications of that should be thought through, because the rate of tax, property tax imposed on land differs depending on the use of the land. And so when you use land a certain way, it should be taxed a certain way. And, you know, and so I think that those things need to, the interrelationship between tax and zoning should be something that should be carefully studied by the county and the city, because it's a combined work done by the zoning is both county and city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. So our next question, and this question was submitted by Sumter Economic Development. What efforts will you support or not to capture downtown housing growth in the Central Business District? And our first person to answer will be Ms. Belcher.
Well, first we would need to put in effect a grant that would allow us to create even more affordable housing, because that's one of the biggest issues. If you don't have affordable housing in the city that is, how can I say, up to par with regular housing rates, it's not like, okay, you live in a house that isn't suitable for you, but it's because you can afford it. If you don't have affordable housing, then you are limiting some of your city's members to having, I guess, equal living standards, equal living capacity. So I think that we need to focus on taking away funding from different areas or creating a new form of funding through government grants or through fundraising itself with the city to try and focus on putting affordable houses in those business areas.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Next up is Ms. Campbell.
The efforts I would support is making for the downtown. I would make it look like a downtown with the houses above the businesses, all maybe 2 miles out on either side from the main street. I will continue I will continue with the growth that's currently going on, because right now, currently, I think that they're doing an awesome job. Currently on Main Street, they do have apartments and homes on top of that's situated on top of the businesses. And I will continue that growth on down on both sides of Main Street and to South Main.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next up is Mr. Parnell.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, I would support housing in downtown. I think that any vibrant downtown has apartments downtown. We just need to build on that. I mean, it's something that would make going to downtown more attractive, and I think that that's something that we should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next is Mr. Merchant.
To speak specifically on the question, it says the Central Business District, which is a specific, our true downtown area. You know, as mentioned, there are some apartments downtown. There are available properties that the same concept could be used, but there's also within the Central Business District, right bordering on it, some parcels that have been identified that I think would be a good use for a public-private partnership of some sort. You know, for the city to be able to come in and provide, being that close in downtown, the infrastructure's there. The water, the sewer, the power is already there, but somehow to create a partnership. This stemmed from when we brought in some consultants last year to kind of help us take our downtown to the next level. They said to continue a thriving downtown, we have to have, you know, residential, have folks in that are walkable, and then the stores will come and more restaurants. So it all hinges on itself. But it is working with some identified parcels that we have to create some new housing there.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next up is Ms. Bowen.
Thank you. I believe that we should approach industry, because a lot of the people that will be working in the factories need affordable housing, and there's so many places in the downtown area that could be developed into townhouses or even duplexes. You could take a single lot and, you know, put 3 townhouses, which are affordable homes. I think that the industry should be asked to maybe do some, is the word donations maybe, or grants, to help facilitate affordable housing for their workers.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next is Mr. Hasty.
Thank you very much. I think we should have downtown here in the Central District incentives to encourage our young people to want to come down, stay downtown, and live downtown. You know, they get these great jobs at Continental. Some of them finish college, but the housing downtown should be affordable. And the situation is we must define what's affordable. You know, because affordable to one person may be $100,000, but affordable to someone else could be $500,000. But our young people would not be able to afford very expensive properties in our city. So I think we need to have incentives that will draw our young people to our downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Moving on to our next question. How would you recommend Sumter address economic development and workforce challenges pertaining to manufacturing and industry job openings? First up, we have Mr. Merchant.
You know, this one's close to me because I am in the manufacturing business, and so we see a vital workforce is such an important, obviously, in our business, and so much of Sumter as we're a manufacturing town. This is, you know, it all goes back to money. You know, I've never heard somebody say they have a money problem. I think they have a lack of money problem. So we need to continue to develop our industry, our other businesses, to promote them to come, to be able to raise to continue to raise the wages in it. And in the manufacturing sector, the wages are higher than some of the other sectors. So I think that's an area that we can grow that. Teaming with Central Carolina as far as how can we develop a workforce, some may or may not know that we have an opportunity that the city and the county has come on board as well. Both will, for every citizen, every young person in the city or county can get a free 2 years at Central Carolina, as long as you have a C average and stay out of trouble. So I think that's a huge critical piece that we're unfortunately not, our young people aren't taking advantage of, to be able to learn a skill or learn a trade to be able to go into a manufacturing job.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next up is Ms. Belcher.
I think we need to focus on a way that we can bring in more jobs, whether that's partnering with different companies or companies that offer multiple facets of jobs and multiple jobs that people may actually be able to qualify for, even if they don't have certain degrees or certifications. That might be a way to help create and bring in more economic development in our areas of Sumter. As far as like, if we had a company that is a large-scale company and does deliveries or things like that, you've created 2 jobs. You've got your customer service workers, you've got your delivery drivers. Now, whoever applies for those jobs, it's a baseline of saying we just need to partner with companies that are gonna allow economic development and enhancement and growth in the city's areas.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Next up is Mr. Hasty.
I am committed to supporting small business and industry in our city. As owner of a small business myself, the Hasty Law Firm, I understand that it is small business that are the engine of most communities. As councilman, in addition to supporting small business, I have participated in the supporting of industry that have recently come to Sumter, like the Continental Tire and other businesses. As mayor, I will continue to support both large businesses and small businesses in the city of Sumter. In order to have a strong economy, you must have a strong workforce, and that is a challenge here in the city of Sumter. I have partnered with Greg Thompson. We've started what we call the Dream Team program with trained citizens in Sumter to develop job-related skills so they are ready to perform in the job market. It is my experience also that crime and community development go hand in hand.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next up, we have Ms. Campbell.
I would create some type of hub in industry for Sumter to have a specialty in. Let it be a technology hub, a medical hub, or even an aerospace science hub. But let Sumter be known for something. Let Sumter have a specialty in this area and create the infrastructure and everything to support it. Also, having a co-op, meaning working with some of the colleges so that we can have the trade or the education piece for our citizens to go to, so that our citizens can have that education piece to be successful at that job.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next up, we have Mr. Parnell.
Thank you. You know, obviously, I think we all support manufacturing jobs here, and for manufacturing jobs, you need to have a skilled workforce. For that, you need education. You need good education. You need to have the ways and means in order to educate people to fill the jobs. And that's why I would support putting a lot of focus on education. At the same time, I think we should, and I applaud the Economic Development Board for the work they've done, bringing so many good companies here and so forth, and that's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, I think we should also realize that manufacturing is part of the economy. The service sector is also a huge part of the economy, and we need to focus on developing good-paying service jobs. You know, healthcare, senior services. There are other things that we could do in that regard. So it's just, this question focuses on manufacturing, but we need to not ignore the services sector, because a vibrant community would have both. Sumter is not just a manufacturing hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next up is Ms. Bowen.
I believe that the biggest challenge we have in our manufacturing industrial base here, I've said it before and I'm going to keep harping on it, is the skilled workforce. People say to me, how will you get more jobs here? I don't think we need more jobs. I think we need more skilled workforce, which piggybacks on what I said earlier about working with middle school kids and maybe some seniors to have them have some self-pride to do well in school, to continue through high school, not drop out like so many do when they get into high school. Take advantage of the 2-year free technical college and then stay here and hopefully provide them affordable homes so they can work in the factories. But until we have enough skilled workers, I think it's going to be a challenge to get more industry to come here.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. All right, and moving on to our next question. This is also partially from Sumter Economic Development, but also from a lot of people in the community and based off our general feedback at the item. What is your plan to address city infrastructure, and what facet is the most critical? For example, roads, sewers, water, stormwater, etc. First up, we have Ms. Campbell.
What plan for the city infrastructure? I would definitely have, it would have to be the drainage and the roads. We have too many potholes that's not currently being fixed in some areas. In the drainage, anytime we have heavy or torrential rains, the roads are being flooded, cars are being stopped. And I do think that we should partner with the city engineers and see how we can actually get the drainage fixed and the roads done all at the same time. And that it's not only good for city for the improvement, but neighborhood improvement as well.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next up is Mr. Parnell.
Thank you. I mean, what makes a city? I mean, a city is its people and the buildings and infrastructure of a city. And the mayor, being the convener of people, would be able to hopefully address problems with the infrastructure in a meaningful way. I think that if you look at the fact that our budget is $71 million in total, our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. 1/3 of that goes to water and sewage now. I think with sewage we might be able to put a sensor at the back end to find out the health and wellness of the community, because you can test the sewage to determine whether or not the community is well. So I think that, again, all of these things are balancing a number of priorities. There's no single answer. That takes a lot of discussion with a lot of people. And as the mayor being convener of people, that's what I would be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next, we have Mr. Merchant.
Number one issue, number one complaint, I guess, that I've received over the 8 years on council and then here the last few weeks and months talking to folks out on the campaign trail is roads. Everybody, and I think that's a state of South Carolina issue. I think we've all driven on I-95. You go from Georgia to South Carolina, it's a significant change. And unfortunately, that trickles down all the way into our city. So, I tell folks, it took me a while to understand, and I still don't quite, you got city roads, state roads, county roads. End of the day, you don't care. I got a pothole on my road, right? And so that's where the mayor can come and continue to advocate for additional funding, because we do pave roads every year, but it's not yours, or it's not, his or hers or wherever. It's just not enough to go around. But I think there's additional revenue that we can just lean on our legislative delegation, just ask them for additional help, just to try to bring to improve that. But I guess roads are a hindrance, and nobody likes to ride on a bumpy road, but water and drainage is damaging, and that's where we had the rain the week before last, a couple weeks ago, and we exposed a lot of our weaknesses around town. And I think drainage is a big issue. I was able to work with 2 years ago in the Sunway Knolls area. We had drainage issues, and we were able to get a new project engineered, increase the capacity over there, and help relieve the drainage issues. So it's both.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next up, we have Mr. Hasty.
Thank you very much. If I had to prioritize those areas, roads, sewer, water, stormwater, I would have to say, as many others have said, it has to be our roads. We elected officials get so many complaints about what are you all doing about our roads. So I would put the emphasis in the city on repairing our roads. As was mentioned, what a lot of people don't seem to understand, many of the roads in the city are state roads. And they are saying, well, why can't you all do something about this road? But it belongs to the state, doesn't belong to the city. And I would try to make an effort that we get these roads back under our control. Of course, it'll take additional dollars, but some things we're going to have to sacrifice to fix, and that would be one of them. Secondly, we should, Archie, you just interrupted me here, raising your hand. It's the roads, and I'll come back to that.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy. Next, we have Ms. Belcher.
Okay, so a few weeks ago or so, we had a partial flood. One of the biggest areas of damage that I'd seen was, I think it's an area over there by McLaughlin Ford, up under the bridge, apparently. The road basically collapsed. Now, you got a lot of people that are sitting on the stage and say, we're gonna fix roads, we're gonna do this. But you have to remember, they have been in office for years, and they make promises that aren't getting kept. So if that was a main focus, or if that was really important to them, it may have already been met, or there would have already been actions in place trying to make those better. And I'm not going to give you promises. I'm going to give you a plan. If elected, my plan for infrastructure goes like this. They say, oh, we don't have funding, so here's how we get funding. Long ago, schools would use things like businesses or pizza places. We have a Sumter City Night. As you come in and purchase food for your family that night, you are supporting that business, and we get a percentage of their sales donated specifically to enhancing our roads and putting walking ramps across our dangerous highways like that of South Pike, where we have lost countless people that live in the city of Sumter due to being hit by a speeding driver or someone who simply didn't see them because of the area or it was dark at night. Those are the kind of things that we need to be doing. We need to have an active plan in place and a new face, a young face that's ready to work and willing to get from behind the desk and petition the city to get it done.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Next is Ms. Bowen.
As a couple of the other gentlemen have said, roads, and then a drain problem. Every time I talk to a group of people, they say, what are you going to do about the roads? And like Mr. Merchant said, they're not all our roads. we have to be concerned with the city of Sumter roads, but there are some areas that they're horrible. I think that there needs to be more budget money earmarked to take care of our roads, and I think that could go hand in hand with the stormwater drainage. When Hurricane Sally came through, we had enormous flooding in certain areas. That shouldn't happen. We need to have infrastructure in some of our larger neighborhoods that are in the city to handle the excess water. I had a house for sale under contract, the whole entire crawl space filled with water. It ruined the heating and air duct. A young military family with a sick baby was supposed to close on it last Friday. They couldn't because there was no place for the water to go in that area but under that house. So.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. You had a 30-second response?
Yes. First, Calvin, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought we were going to raise these things when we have a discussion, and I would like to have a discussion rather than just, 5-second answers to these things. Respectfully, I don't agree with this notion of taking state roads back into the city and trying to do more than we can do. We've got limited budget and so forth, and that would just be so complicated to try to do. But what I think needs to be done is that the mayor, as the convener, develops relationships with the Department of Transportation and other places in order to make sure that the right focus is given at the right time. Thank you.
Time's up. Thank you. All right, and any other responses? No? Yeah. Moving on to the next question. This is submitted in part by the general circumstances and in part by a couple Sumter residents. Sumter resident Rose Coakley submitted part of this question, but what is your plan to support and balance the economy and citizens' health as the community continues to be impacted by COVID-19 and eventually its aftermath? And to start, we will have Mr. Merchant.
The city isn't necessarily set up we don't have a city health department. So we have to lean on the professionals and the experts, so whether that's being I guess the federal government coming down to the state, and really, I guess through this process, we've leaned on and taken advice from the state. So continuing through with the mask ordinance that's been passing, doing that, and then following the other social distancing guidelines that are recommended, I think, as far as from a city standpoint, what we can do to be able to allow citizens to have as much normalcy as we can while we navigate through this.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next is Ms. Bowen.
I don't think, luckily, that our community has been affected as badly as a lot of other communities, and partly because of our military town. We have people pouring into our economy. Last weekend, there was not one available hotel room. So that meant our restaurants were thriving, our hotels were thriving. Thank God for the military, because I think without them, we'd probably be about a town the size of Manning. So I think, fortunately, we have not been hit nearly as hard as other communities surrounding us. So I think we just have to get used to the new normal. We have to wear our masks. We have to social distance, wash our hands. And I think Sumter's doing an amazing job of doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next, we have Mr. Hasty.
Thank you very much. As a retired colonel who has served 20 years in the United States Army, I'm trained to lead in the midst of a battle. This COVID-19 battle is one of the greatest healthcare crises we have ever witnessed in this country. There have been more than 210,000 Americans' lives lost due to COVID-19, more than 300 in this state, more than 78 in the city of Sumter. Many citizens are still affected by the virus as well. I continue to stand with the medical community in their recommendation of washing your hands, watching your social distance, wearing your mask. As a councilman, my voting record shows I voted from the very beginning in line with what the science was telling us as safe for our community to do. I have supported my community in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic by informing them where they can go to get tested for COVID-19 viruses, where they can receive supplies, and help them stay safe. As a councilman, I have published a monthly newsletter for the past 5 years with information about safety and COVID-19 support. This newsletter also has emergency contact numbers printed in both English and Spanish to make sure all citizens of Sumter know how to receive health and safety support. As mayor, I will continue to make every effort to communicate with all the citizens of Sumter.
Time is up. Thank you. All right, next we have Mr. Parnell.
Thank you for this question, actually. I like this question because when this thing started in March, we started with these COVID masks, and my wife and I gave them 2,000 of these. In addition to that, I was named chair of the Sumter County Bar Association's COVID Help Committee, which provides help to Sumter residents and businesses on COVID-related legislation, PPP loans, et cetera, et cetera. Spent a lot of time on that. In addition, I've given seminars on the tax changes that have been made by the COVID laws that have changed. And that's how we balance the safety of our citizens with the economy. Because this question says balance. So you need to do both. You need to be safe. You need to have these things provided. I'm happy to see that the city has just given some, following this, has given some masks to people, and that's a good thing. I also think we need to take advantage of federal rules that provide things to us, and we need to understand those rules. And I've been active in that and would continue to be active in that. We cannot just simply stay in our houses, and we cannot just simply go to bars and breathe all over each other. We've got to have a balance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next, we have Ms. Belcher.
First things first, in order to balance the economy in this situation, I think that we should halt all evictions in the city until the pandemic is over. And the reason for that is because we've got people who aren't working, and they have families, they have children, and they have to look their children in their faces and in their eyes and tell them, we don't have anywhere to go. And it's not necessarily their fault. We have a pandemic, a crisis on us. We have people that are actually homeless or becoming homeless because of this crisis in this very city. And one of the other ways in which we need to continue is to try working with our local clinics. Even so, if we have a free clinic here ran by Dr. Brenda Williams, we need to work with her in order to help them get more masks and more COVID-19 self-help kits out to people. We need to create more advanced testing sites, more localized in different areas, so that we can have people that are in just walking distance get to these places and find out if they are in fact positive, trying to come back around and meet this head on.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Next, we have Ms. Campbell.
COVID-19 has brought upon panic within our community, within the state, and within our country. It caused businesses to close, parks, schools, and it changed the way that we interact with each other. We have to rebuild our community. We have to rebuild the businesses within our community, and we also have to rebuild the way how we interact with each other. Right now, we don't have the closeness as we used to because everyone is in such a panic. Oh, don't get too close, don't touch me, or something like, or, you know, the closeness that we used to feel in our community, the small hometown feel. We no longer have that as much. And I think once the COVID-19 is over, that is something that we're going to have to rebuild. We're going to have to rebuild the interaction between everyone. We're going to have to rebuild the businesses. A lot of businesses closed. The doors are locked. They're talking through the doors. So it's almost, I don't think that it's becoming the new way of life. I just think that we just need to proceed with caution and continue to do business as usual with our mask on.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. All right, moving on to our next question. This question was submitted by members of our community and also by the Sumter County League of Women Voters. What are your priorities when it comes to public safety in the city? We'll start this one with Ms. Belcher.
First, I think we need to tackle making sure that COVID-19 is taken seriously by the public. I think that we need to continue to enhance our social distancing and our mask mandate. I also think that we need to start focusing on effective ways to stop or limit our crime in the city in different areas. And I also think that we need to focus on our schools and the education process and how we can make that much safer for our children and our families as they begin to try to prepare their lives from this crisis.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Next is Mr. Hasty.
As a retired Army officer, the safety of this country and the safety of our community will always come first to me. In my military training, we are taught that duty is doing what needs to be done without being told. Right now, as leaders, it is our duty to listen and to lead. Listen to our young people in our community and to our neighborhood associations. And some are telling us that they do not feel safe. And we must lead the way forward in order to provide safe communities for all citizens. Plans to improve crime starts with improving relationships between the police and the community. I've established neighborhood associations so that citizens may have a voice in improving their communities. Through those neighborhood associations, we are partnered with our police and codes department to help Sumter be a safer place for all. To demonstrate the need for partnership between our communities and the police, I've encouraged the participation in what is about to happen next week on National Night Out, October the 6th, which represents the partnership between the police department and the community, working together, keep neighborhoods safe, and they're asking all of us to turn on our lights that night, and we hope that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next, we have Ms. Campbell.
Piggybacking on what Mr. Hasty said, just listening to our community and working together with the city and county police departments and come up with a solution that will solve the problems within our communities, like, with crime, with children's safety, crime, elderly abuse. A lot of things are going on within our community, and being able to combat that from the beginning and finding the root cause of it and ensuring that we take care of it from the root cause.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next is Mr. Parnell.
Thank you. There's several things I'd like to say about this, but I'm going to focus only on the crime aspect first. And that is, we need to adopt measures like gun sensors. These are devices, technology, where you can triangulate where a gun is fired, and police can then go to that spot quickly. And there's no cameras involved, and so there's no privacy issues, but these would be sensors that would be placed around the city that would be able to triangulate a gunshot. So there would be quick response. The other thing we need is community policing. And one of the things that we have with the Sumter Police Department now, which I think is a wonderful thing, is their Checkmate program, which is run by Papa G, where he goes to communities, he meets with people, he checks on people. Checkmate, it's not checkmate as in chess, but it's rather checkmate, check, 2 words, checking you mate. And so that's the other thing we need to do. We need to care about each other, is basically what it comes down to. We need to care about each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next, we have Mr. Merchant.
You know, if you have a fire, or if you have an incident where you need police, you want them to show up in a timely manner and act in a professional manner. Get there quickly and be professional when they get there. Put out the fire, or in my case, a couple weeks ago, the burnt bacon at breakfast. So to do that, we have to make sure they're properly trained and properly funded. So I would continue to advocate for and make sure we have the budget dollars in to allow for the training for the police and the fire. That they have the tools and equipment and the salary and the payroll they need to be competitive, to offer competitive wages, to be able to attract quality firemen and women and policemen and women. You know, it's been mentioned, community policing is a huge thing. A first-hand example of that, last year I came home and saw the kids a few doors down playing football, and who was the quarterback? Well, it was a police officer riding through the neighborhood. So I think that's critical that we make sure we're doing all of that, and we do. We just need to do more of that, and then with the fire department, getting in the schools like they do, continuing to educate the children from the young and the neighborhoods that they can count on a public safety professional if the need arises.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next is Ms. Bowen.
I feel very strongly about this. I think we need more resources for our city's police department. I think we need to offer more competitive wages. I think we need more officers. I don't know that a lot of people know that our crime has actually decreased about 10% over last year. And when people ask me what I think about crime, they all seem to think it's going up. It is going down. So the officers that we have are doing a stellar job. I do know the city offered $10,000 grants for city law enforcement to buy homes here to keep them here, which is a very good incentive. So I've worked with 2 detectives that bought homes here, planted roots here, and planned to stay here because they were given that $10,000 grant. And also FHA was offering loans for law enforcement, not loans, but down payment assistance program of $15,000. So we just need, it all boils down to money and resources to have the best police department we can have, and neighborhood crime watch, which I think we're doing a pretty good job of that.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Would you like a 30-second response?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Bowen, thank you for your comments. I just want to point out a fact, which is that when you look at the city's budget of $71 million, it's split roughly into three ways. One is more than a third goes to police and public safety, a third goes to water and sewage, a third everything else. And so, you know, when we say priorities, we have to realize that, you know, a big chunk of our budget goes to public safety and police already. And it's all a question about priorities, because if we only focus on that, we'll forget about the other things.
Can I respond
Thank you.
to that?
Yes.
I'm well aware of the budget. Thank you, Mr. Parnell. We still do not pay our law enforcement as much as areas around us. I do know that a large portion is earmarked, but I think we need to come up with more ways to increase resources, and I have some good ideas that I will share at another time. But I think the crux of having a safe community is as in the community, our sheriff's department and our police department.
Thank you. Ms. Belcher, 30 seconds.
I'm not sure if many of you know this or not, but a few months ago, there was a grant that came through and was voted on by the Sumter County Council, where they took the funding away from the school board and gave it to the Sumter Sheriff's Office, the Sumter Sheriff's Department, in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic, when we have children that still don't have internet in their homes. They have to do virtual learning. We have parents that still have to basically teach these children. And so now we're having to structure our days around finding out if we can take these children to places where we have, you know, wireless abilities.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
You already responded, so. Ms. Merchant,
No, just
30
for
seconds.
the record on that, that comment was directed at County Council and the Sheriff's Department, which the city does not have anything to do with.
She said county.
I said that.
Right.
I'm
All right.
aware of that, but it's still important enough.
All right, thank you all. Moving on to our next question.
I did have a comment.
We're only doing one response for each round. Thanks. Our nation has experienced a public and widespread response to systemic racism and racial inequity since George Floyd's killing on May 25th. What do you think are Sumter's strengths and weaknesses in terms of racial equity? To start this, we have Mr. Parnell.
Thank you. If you look at South Carolina, 1 in 3 of our population are black, but 2 of 3 in our prisons are black. And there's something wrong with that kind of number. You know, I think that strengths here in Sumter, I think we need to mention the fact that we have pastors like Pastor Marion Newton of Jehovah Missionary Baptist Church, Pastor Clay Smith of Alice Drive Baptist Church getting together to lead a unity march several months ago, and that was a wonderful thing, from Grace Baptist Church down to the courthouse. We need more of that. We need more discussion. I think I'm the only candidate that has put in public writing the fact that we need to have a very serious discussion about the city's connections, because after all, the mayor is part of the city's connections to racial justice and economic justice, and that's something that I can commit to you that we will do as the convener of people, getting people together to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Next, we have Ms. Bowen.
Racism and unity in our community is probably my biggest platform. I think it's fortunate that we're a military town. I was brought up in a military family where we were taught that we're all God's children. So I think because we're kind of a melting pot of a lot of military folks, that does help. And I'm not one to ever look for pats on the back from things I do behind the scenes. But when all the rioting was going on, my pastor is Pastor Clay Smith, and I called Pastor Smith and Pastor Clay, and I said, we don't have any clergy stepping forward, commenting or doing something about how we feel about the rioting, which Sumter didn't really have much of anything happen. But I suggested to him that we get rid of the word protest and have a prayer vigil or a peace rally, and do not use a negative word like protest. Don't call it a peaceful protest. He said, I hear what you're saying. He hung up the phone and called Pastor Newton, and they collaborated and came up with a police and pastor march, which turned into an extremely successful event. But it shouldn't stop there. It should be a monthly event.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next, we have Mr. Merchant.
Racism is a hard issue. And as a Christian, I'm called to love everybody. And I think that's our biggest strength in Sumter, as mentioned, with the pastors coming together, marching from Grace all the way to the courthouse. But we also, a component of that was our police department, led by our police chief and other senior officers. So as a coming together as a unified city, the public, the police, the pastors, all working together. Sumter, that's, I think, a hidden gem that we have. We're growing, but yet we're still small enough to have a sense of community and be able to reach out to these local pastors, police chiefs. We all have access with each other to be able to come together and talk about these issues and work through them, as opposed to them escalating to an unfortunate circumstance.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. Next, we have Mr. Hasty.
I don't think racism is a hard issue. When we have a country where 68% of the African American young men don't finish high school, 24% of them do graduate, and we have 6% that actually go to college. Then we look at our prison environment, and we have 6 times as many African American young men in prison than we have any other race. The challenge, though, I think in Sumter, because we are a small community, I think our diversity is our strength. We just need to get together, let's talk more. It seems to be a subject we all want to walk around, but I will implement initiatives where we're going to pull folks together. We got to sit down and talk about this matter, because it can eat this city alive.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next, we have Ms. Campbell.
When it comes to racism, this is a major problem within a country, period. And it shows here in Sumter, whereas for one, when it comes to the penny tax, everyone pays that penny tax. The penny tax is not being distributed evenly across the city. It shows in the education, whereas a lot of the schools that are predominantly in majority black areas, they're being closed. That means that money is not being funded evenly, education isn't being funded evenly, and they're just not treated as well as other parts of the community. And I think that is something that needs to be looked at as a whole for the city of Sumter. When it comes to the penny tax, what are they doing with it instead of building a lot of other things on Southside? The recreational centers, they're being closed. We need to go back, look at reopening those, letting the children have something to do when it comes to education, reopening those schools, having teachers there so that hiring more teachers and ensuring that all races are treated evenly across the board.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next, we have Ms. Belcher.
One of the most important things I can say about this issue is that if you are not a candidate that has ever had to walk into a place like Salvation Army or United Ministries and ask for help and get turned away, and then you have to wonder, is it because they really couldn't help me, or is it because of my race? If you haven't felt that pain, you can't tackle this issue because you don't get it. So therefore, when it comes to that, we need to start making our citizens feel equal. There are people who work in these places that make them feel as though they're less than just because they come in and need help. That's one of the ways we can stop the racial injustice, because we have to know that people are equal. Just because they need a little bit of help doesn't set them aside, doesn't make them different from you. One of the other things we have an issue with, a long time ago, when a child saw a police officer in uniform, that was a role model. You look at him and you go, oh, I can be that too, I can do that. I'm helping my community. But that's not what we got now. We look at the officers, and even my children, they're in my car, they see a blue light behind me, they're immediately afraid. They have associated the uniform for the police officer with tragedy of Black lives. And not just that, and it's not just Black lives anymore, it's everyone that is being injustice by these police officers. We need to make it so that our community, especially the communities where we have certain officers that patrol those areas, will start interacting with those community members through give back programs or whatever else that we can do to enhance that.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. All right, and so it is now 7:20, so we have 10 minutes left, so we're going to enter into our final question for the night. And this question was submitted by Sophia Powell. She's a 5th grader, tenderfoot rank from Boy Scout Troop 333, based out of Trinity United Methodist in Sumter. And she asked, why do you want to be mayor? And we're going to start this final question with Ms. Bowen.
I want to be mayor because I am very passionate about our city. I love Sumter. I've been here 46 years. I've been a good ambassador for our community. I'm 66 years old. My business is running like a well-oiled machine, and I probably have a good about 10 years left in me. So I would like to do everything I can for Sumter, that has been such a great supporter of my business, Miss Libby's, and my business, Bowen and Associates Realty. And I feel like the best way I can do that, and I know I will be an extremely good mayor, I think the best way I can give back to my community is to be the mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Next, we have Ms. Campbell.
My community invited me to become mayor. And with that being said, working as a real estate agent within a community, hearing what they're telling me, asking me, saying, you know, what can I do? Is there something that we can do? Can you be a voice for us? During that time, being a voice, talking to the police chief, or even the county, or even the sheriff's office, or to city council, or anything, sometimes it falls on deaf ears. I understand, it's a lot to do once you're in city council, because there are a lot of complaints. There are a lot of things. And the city council, you do have to prioritize with what's most important and what's going to affect the masses. And with that being said, with me being this mayor, I can be a voice for the people. I can be a voice for the underserved. I can be a voice for the served, the privileged, the underprivileged. I can be a voice for the entire community, because I am Sumter and I am the community.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Next, we have Mr. Hasty.
Thank you very much. I was born and raised here in Sumter. My 98-year-old mother is still living, and she always taught me that if you see something that needs to be changed, then you make an effort to change it. My desire to be the mayor of Sumter is based on my continued commitment to make things better for all the citizens of Sumter by focusing on my key areas, which are public health and safety, economic development, affordable housing, youth empowerment and initiatives, and of course, the military. With continued improvement and focus on these areas, this will allow all citizens of Sumter to experience positive change and progress as we move forward as one Sumter. Sumter is stronger when all citizens of Sumter move forward as one city and one vision. It is important that the citizens of Sumter to know that their vote matters. Absentee in-person voting starts October 5th, and the election is November 3rd. Go vote.
Thank you, Mr. Hasty. Next, we have Mr. Parnell.
Thank you. Children always ask the best questions. A number of people came to me and asked me to consider running for mayor, and I thought about it long and hard and talked with my wife, Sarah. And I think, as I said in the beginning, Sumter has given me so much I wanted to give back. We came back to Sumter to make a difference. When I look at my strengths, I have a lot of experiences that I can bring, a lot of insights from different parts of the world that I can bring to bear. I'm also very detail-oriented. The devil is always in the details, and that's where I feel most comfortable. So I like getting into the details, and city ordinances and that sort of thing are details, and I would be good at that. The other thing that I wanted to say is that as a consequence, I also wanted to be, if I was going to be the mayor for everybody, not just one group or leaving out other groups. I would be the mayor for everybody. My signs have red on one side and blue on the other, and that was intentional because I want to be the mayor for everybody and because I care. And so I was hesitant to say this, but I'm going to commit to you tonight that in the event that I'm elected mayor, when I'm elected mayor, I'm going to donate my entire salary to nonprofits that do good things in Sumter in order to give back to Sumter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Merchant.
Why do I want to be mayor? It started there, and it's kind of fitting we in there, obviously. I have 4 kids. I have a senior, a freshman at Sumter High, a 6th grader, and a 3rd grader at Alice Drive. So me personally, that's why I want to be mayor. But it's not just about my kids. It's about your kids and grandkids and all the children here. You know, as we see, most of us would all agree, I think it's in the youth in our community. And so how can we could make Sumter the best place it can be as that youth grows, that they get a good education, they have a good quality of life, they have the resources they need to succeed. So as mayor, I can take my business strengths and my experience on council and continue to help uplift the entire city to take us to a new level of accomplishment. You know, mayor's not about one person. You know, it's a team captain, as I would call it. And it's about a leader, a proven leader, that develops other leaders around them to take up the whole team, to move us forward, to take us to new levels that we've made great progress over the last 20 years. And I think the table is set for us all as we all can come apart, be a part of the team. Everybody has different strengths. All our citizens have strengths and ideas that we could use. And so the mayor is the person to listen to those and uplift everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. And last, we have Ms. Belcher.
I want to be mayor because I have watched the city for a while, and I've seen a lot of different things that can be enhanced and changed. One of the other issues is because I'm not a polished politician, I'm a person. I'm a human being. You get a human being put in office that actually cares about everyone in the city, and the thought process is, how can I help every single person? What can I do that can make this better? I've already stood in places that no other elected official would show their face as advocating for this community. I have always been there. I have always had an eye for my community. I have always tried to be an activist in whatever way that I could. I have been there, and that sets me aside because I actually show my heart and my feelings about being there for people, being passionate about children and their education, our safety, our city, and just in what ways we can enhance the living of all our citizens here.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. And so that'll wrap up our debate for the night. I want to thank all 6 of you again for coming out tonight. This will be posted shortly once it finishes up and loads. It'll be posted on our Facebook page at the item, and it will soon also be posted on our website. And you can look for coverage in the paper and online in the coming days. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.